They're getting They're a bunch of idiots getting drunk, talking about conspiracy theories. There's really not much more to it than that. You're listening to Drunk Theory.
Welcome. We fuck it up every time. Hold on.
Yeah, we can't stop what we're doing.
Welcome to Drunk Theory. I'm Kara.
I'm Kelly.
I'm Matthew. I'm Ryan.
And today we've got a special guest with us, Mr. John Brooks. Go ahead and talk about your shit.
Hi. Talk about my shit.
Yeah.
My name's John Brooks.
Full of peanuts.
I have two podcasts, and I'm delighted to be on yours. I can talk about my other podcast if you want me to, or we can talk about it later.
Talk about everything.
Oh, sure. All right, fine. I have two podcasts. One has been going on for a number of years. It is called Hard to Believe. My day job is I'm a religious studies teacher. And so it is a podcast that is usually about religion for people who don't really care that much about religion. So I try to make it, accessible. And I talk about conspiracy theories. I talk about cults. I talk about atheism. I talk about Satanism. I talk about all manner of things on the show, and try to expand the idea of what belief and religion really is all about. And then, coming up is our fourth episode. So we just started 1999, the podcast, which is a podcast about the movies of 1999. We have so far covered The Matrix with Chris Cluey, and we just covered The Phantom Menace with the hosts of the Star Wars podcast, Return of the Pod. And then next up, we have The Blair Witch Project, which is a really fun one. And our guest for that will be Chelsea Weber-Smith, who is the host of American Hysteria. So every Monday, I have a podcast that comes out, depending on what you want to listen to. They are on a rotating schedule. So I'm always able to be in your ears every week on Monday in one of two forms. So.
I can't imagine doing two.
We can barely get our one out.
Yeah, it's
And there's a bunch of us.
Yeah.
I did Hard to Believe weekly last season, and it nearly killed me. So I hit an ambitious streak, and I was just trying to churn them out, and yeah, it's too much. For my other podcast, 1999, I have a co-host, Joey Lewandowski. So we share some of the burden of putting it together. But yeah, I think when it's two different podcasts, it feels like less work than when it's just one over and over again. But I don't know, we pull it off. We take breaks when we need to, and that's how you do it. That's how podcasting goes. That's the podcasting life.
Bitches.
Gotta hustle.
Take a break, whenever there's something good on TV. Something we want to go see.
It's cloudy outside. We're not recording today.
We're not recording.
I should also plug. So both shows are on the Cage Club Podcast Network. That was a podcast network started by my co-host Joey Lewandowski. The original show on that network was a show called Cage Club, which was him and his friend Mike Manzi watching and talking about every Nicolas Cage movie in order.
I feel like I follow them.
Oh, do you? Okay,
I think
cool. There you go.
I don't know them. I know Cage's Kiss. There's actually a few people who do the Nicolas Cage thing.
Yeah, there are.
Oh,
There
shit,
are a couple.
The National Treasure people.
Yep.
Yeah, there are multiple Nicolas Cage.
So we have a whole bunch of pop culture podcasts on the network. They also did Keanu Club. They did Cruise Club. They've done all of Tom Hanks's movies. They did one about Charlize Theron.
That's hilarious.
And right now he's also the co-host of Too Fast, Too Forever, which is a Too Fast, Too Furious, or Fast and Furious, I should say, podcast, where they watch every Fast and Furious movie over and over and over again for all time and talk. And other stuff. They talk about other stuff too, but that's
I need to check out the Keanu. one because I just recently watched Knock Knock.
That is
nice.
a terrible fucking movie.
Which was about the funniest thing I've ever seen.
It's really, it's pretty bad.
I just
Yeah.
found that funny. It was
It's
so
free pizza. Like,
unsettling.
that's the worst movie I've ever seen.
It was so bad, but it was so funny because it was so bad.
Oh my god.
I was on a few episodes of that show. I did all the Matrix episodes, and I also did what was it? Oh, The Devil's Advocate. I was on that one as well. And I didn't do Speed, even though Speed is like my favorite movie of all time. But
Well, now you just have to get out because you didn't do Speed. Like,
the movie Speed
show's over, y'all.
1994.
Why didn't you do Speed?
in parentheses.
I watched that shit like every.
She went through a phase when we
Oh, I can quote the entire fucking movie. I used to just hang out like. I had a friend, she and I just knew every line of the movie. We would like, if we were bored in the bar and had
It's a
nothing to
fucking
talk
great
about,
movie.
we just recite Speed lines over like, yeah, for hours on end. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
there was like several months where you never had to wonder what Kara was doing because Kara was watching Speed.
3 or 4 times a day.
You shot me. They gave you a medal because you shot me, you little prick. Harry, you told me to. Yeah, I can do them all.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I love it.
All right. Well, today we are talking about Polybius is what started it, but then we also added some other bullshit in there. So
Yeah.
just like internet type bullshit.
I said
Yeah.
video game conspiracies.
But they're not video games. Just the one is a video game.
Oh,
But
Well,
Allegedly.
allegedly.
allegedly they're video games.
No, allegedly only the one is a video game. The rest of them are definitely not video games.
So
also-
Kelly, what are we
No.
drinking?
All right, so we have 2 drinks for this very special episode. So I'm making a shot called the Bulbasaur. And to make the Bulbasaur, you need a half ounce of lime vodka, 1/4 ounce of lime juice, 1/4 ounce of Midori. Shake that shit together, pour it in a shot glass, and it is yummy and delicious.
It is.
Then we have the more grown-up cocktail version of the Bulbasaur, which is the Ivysaur. So you have an ounce of lime vodka, an ounce of lime juice, an ounce of Midori. Shake all that shit together with ice. Pour it into a rocks glass, top it off with Sprite, and then add mint leaves for garnish to make it fancy.
Is that the evolved version of the other shot?
We switched over to solo cups because they hold more.
We do have them all in like fancy rocks glasses where you see the mint. No, solo cups.
Now we're
We're
partying.
not fancy.
Because nobody wants to get a refill every 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, those glasses are not big enough.
I know.
Just go ahead and give me a big cup and make it a double.
Get a bigger cup and make it a triple.
So what are you drinking? Are you drinking?
I am drinking a little bit. As I said, I am currently on some pretty heavy COVID antiviral medication.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You probably can't drink.
Which fucks me up quite a bit. No, you actually can drink with it because it's not like antibiotics. So it's but you don't want to necessarily because you're already a little bit off your ass on those. So I am drinking a little bit of Trader Joe's wine, because I'm super fancy. So
Hell yeah.
We're all
that's about
There's
all I
solo
can
cups.
handle tonight.
Hell yeah. Did it come in a box?
No, it came in a bottle. Came in a bottle. Probably, I would assume that the majority of the price tag was the cost of the bottle.
The bottle
You know.
in a box.
Yeah.
They found out you can ship bottles in boxes and just give them to the stores. You can take the bottle right out.
That's it. That's right. Bottled box wine.
What's that kind? What's the box wine?
Oh, there's more than one.
Franzia, that's the fucking
Franzia's
one.
was
That's the original.
Was the first box.
That's like a
There's
giant
another
bag.
one though, right? What's
In
the
a box.
I realized that I ripped open one day to figure it out in like 7th grade, and it was just a box of plastic inside. I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
And then I found out milk in Canada comes in bags too. That's so weird.
Some places have water in bags, and that's fucking weird. You
That's
just go to the
even
store and buy a
weirder.
bag of water.
Our crazy neighbor used to drink that box wine, and she would just like open the box and walk around with the bag. Like,
So she just went full on Frank. I'm getting old. It's getting
she's
real
like,
weird
well,
with it. Fuck it.
she's like, well, I know I'm going to drink the whole thing anyway, so like the bag's just easier to transport, I guess.
We could do like a whole show about our crazy ass ex neighbor because she was damn nuts. But we're not gonna do that.
We're here to talk about Polybius.
Talk about-
Does this need to be pointed
No,
right at
no,
me?
no.
Fuck with things.
No,
Why
no,
would you mess with it?
Sorry.
We already
I'm the loudest one, and I feel weird with it pointing right at me. I'm like,
it's omnidirectional.
oh, is it?
Yeah.
I don't know about shit. My bad. All right. I know you have talked about Polybius before. Apparently,
I
that's
have.
your jam. That's your shit. You love it.
I do. It's a great story.
So, educate us on the likes of Polybius.
Please.
All right. Well, as the story goes, Polybius, the game, first appeared, actually only appeared at one particular arcade in Portland, Oregon in the fall of 1981. And immediately there was like lines to play this game. It was apparently like super duper addictive. Very, very sort of bright, colorful graphics. I don't know if you guys ever played any arcade games from 1981, but like, you know, they weren't especially impressive most of the time. So this had this very sort of like, you know, entrancing sort of hypnotic effect on people. And as legend goes, people were playing it for hours and hours at a time. There was stories about people like going into literal trances of hypnosis, having seizures, all that sort of thing. And nobody else had this game. It was only in this one particular arcade. So there's a bunch of like weird stories that surround it. There's stories that there were like men in black who, speaking of conspiracy theories, men in black who would come to like service the machine, like put patches on it, change something in the machine and then go out, or like do some kind of a reading on like what was happening on the machine. And so there's all these people who say that they saw these people come in and out of the arcade and they were servicing it, and they thought they were like government, you know, undercover feds or whatever. But the darkest story by far of Polybius is attributable to a guy named Bobby Feldstein, who was 14 years old at the time, and he gave an interview with PDX. I'm going to quote from them here. So he's talking about having been abducted from this arcade called Coin Kingdom, and that's where he says Polybius actually was. And so PDX says, quote, "He was led through a series of underground tunnels, akin to the tunnels of Portland's Shanghai lore, and was found the next day more than 60 miles from his house in the middle of the Tillamook State Forest. Feldstein claims there was another boy with him, one who rescued him. Feldstein gives for-profit Polybius walking tours around Portland," that's a little sus, by the way, that attempt to authenticate his experience by returning to the former basement of Coin Kingdom. He claims the ordeal of the abduction ruined his life, telling the podcast audience, it's the podcast who covered him, "Doing the tour is a way to exercise my demons on a daily basis." So then after Polybius is in this arcade for a month, it suddenly just goes missing and nobody ever sees it or hears from it again. And rumors about it don't start popping up until the late 1990s, when people start talking about, "Hey, Polybius, you ever play that game or see that game or hear about this game? And I heard about this kid in this arcade and he got abducted," and, you know, everything else. There's this kind of like weird bubbling underground Polybius hysteria that starts emerging in the late 1990s. And you know, the most notable thing about Polybius, about this game, is that it never existed and it's not real, and none of that's true. Like none of that stuff is like there's no corroborating evidence to say that any of this ever happened. And that this kid, Bobby Feldstein, who does appear to be a real person and does appear to actually give walking tours and may actually be psychologically disturbed by something that may have happened to him when he was 14, had nothing to do with the game Polybius, because there's absolutely no reason to believe that it existed in the first place. So that begs the question, what the fuck?
I will say this.
Yeah.
There's no evidence. There's a lot of stuff that's been erased, but all the stuff that could have been erased in the 80s was a lot easier to do back then.
That's what I was about
And
to say.
if we
It's like-
didn't know it was released now, the fact that MK Ultra ever existed, we wouldn't know. And we know 100% people like Ted Kaczynski were subjected to that in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
So the CIA has an unlimited budget.
Yep.
And apparently they're all fucking just weird as hell because I always just do the weirdest shit, right? So, you know, so where do you stand? You're just absolutely no, it's fake. It never existed. You don't believe it can possibly be a real thing.
There's good reasons to believe it didn't exist, but I'm glad you brought up the MK Ultra thing, because I think that's a really big part of the story. Like I'm going to get to the end of this, but ultimately, like, what fascinates me about this story and why I think it's such a great story is actually what it says about urban legends and conspiracy theories, and like the way those things collide, and like how that happens, right? And like, and how we sort of build these things, and how real things that did happen, like MK Ultra, right, can sort of feed into creating these kinds of narratives. So one of the real, like, telling reasons why we shouldn't believe any of this story is that the only real first traceable, I said people started talking about it in the 1990s, that too is also fake. The first real traceable instance of anybody mentioning this game at all is in February of 2000, and it shows up on a website called coinop.org. Coinop.org is a internet video game museum / database. It's like IMDb, but for old video games, right? It's run by a guy named Ken Koller, Koller. And he just, in all of his databases, at some point, sometime in February of 2000, he puts in Polybius, released in 1981, and that's pretty much it, right? Just puts this game into his database. And then at some point near that time, he calls GamePro. Maybe you guys, did you guys grow up playing video games? Do you know what GamePro is?
Yeah, I had GamePro. I was a subscriber.
I was subscribed for like 15 years. I had that issue somewhere.
I'm not a gamer, but I know what that is.
Okay. So GamePro, there's really another interesting thing that happened with GamePro. I'm going to talk about that at the end as well. But GamePro, you guys remember, was like the cool, like, edgy video game magazine. Like, it wasn't like really edgy, but like it was like the Nintendo Power for like cool kids, right?
It was Fangoria for video games.
It kind of was, yeah. it was like a combination of like Fangoria and like Rolling Stone or like Spin or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it had this kind of rock and roll vibe. It was also like produced and written by young writers. I know some of the people who used to work for GamePro. They were all in their like early 20s when they're making that magazine, right? So they have a particular sort of vantage point for this. Koller calls up GamePro after he puts this on his website and says, "Hey, have you ever heard the story of Polybius?" And he talks to a guy named whose writing name was Dan Electro. So Dan Electro, not his real name, writes a piece to investigate this story, and he decides that it is inconclusive as to whether or not Polybius ever existed. Okay, so going back to coinop.org, I want to read you something. So this comment appears underneath the entry for Polybius sometime later, and I'm going to read everything from it. It's from a guy who calls himself Steve Roach. Okay, and here's what he says. Marek Wachusik was the programmer who came up with the name Polybius. He'd studied Greek mythology at Masaryk University and came up with the name because it sounded quite a bit bold and mysterious, which is what we wanted quite simply. The inspired graphics combined with the puzzle elements and scintillating gameplay was something to behold. We play tested it for hours and hours, and it certainly was an addictive game that was well loved professionally and recreationally by all that played it. We then received a phone call stating that there were concerns within the company that the basic graphics, which featured prominently in so many other games at the time, were fine for the average gamer to spend hours at a time without any noticeable physical or mental detriments. But the intense and engrossing gameplay of this new step was very much an unknown quantity, so the game was put back several months due to divided opinion within their board of directors, much to our consternation for breaking our backs to finish it on time. We disbanded shortly afterwards because we didn't want to restrict ourselves to the stringent deadlines of other companies and favored distancing ourselves from the game in case of any lingering recriminations, which could have done a great deal of damage to our personal and professional reputations, which was our livelihood, and which some of us have having very young families, this was extremely important to us. As far as I'm aware, no ROMs or otherwise exist unless we remain in the bowels of the company that distributed it. We only received a basic payment in view of the fact that the game was withdrawn without nationwide or international distribution. So we grew to loathe it, and it was often a cursed word whenever we used to meet up, and still is today, which is a shame. Okay, So this is the comment that this guy leaves. So what he's claiming is that he was a programmer on Polybius, right? He and this other guy like put this game together, and it was so ahead of its time, and it was super advanced. They put a ton of work into it, and the powers that be step in and basically say like, no, we got to make these changes. We gotta do something, and you only have this certain deadline. You got to meet the deadline. So what he's basically saying is, we created this game. We knew it was super addictive. Some mysterious people said we have to change it. We knew we couldn't meet the deadline. So I walked away, and I don't know what happened after that, right? If you actually read this comment, it's really clever because the precision of all the misspelled words and like the bad grammar, which make it seem like it's really an authentic person who's actually making a comment. Like if it was all perfectly written, it would seem very suspect. But it seems like someone who's just sort of on the fly trying to recount his story. But it's actually too perfect, right? So like some of the misspellings just don't make any sense. Like he spells inspired inspired, right? And then like, yeah, like scintillating. It's all like words like that you can see someone misspelling, but not like on the fly. So anyway, people try to track down this Steve Roach guy. There is one person who claims to be him, and he's like, "Yeah, it was a fake. I just made it up." Right? It's not. I wasn't really on the team. Whether or not Kohler had something to do with putting this guy up to it, or whether or not he is Steve Roach, or like whatever, we don't really know. But it seems to be that it's all in sort of service of this massive hoax, right? So we can't find this guy. We know what Kohler did. We also know that nobody ever on record mentioned Polybius before 2000. We know that this is the sort of genesis point of it. And so the question is like, what is it, and what is it in reference to, and like why do people now go back and have this fake memory of this game, right? Because like there's something really genius about the construct of this particular hoax that makes it really, really cool. So this is a great example of
I was just thinking,
it's the Mandela effect,
like where people actually remember playing it.
Right. So it's a great example of the Mandela effect, but it's also, I think, the only Mandela effect that I know of that is like an Inception Mandela effect. Like what Kohler theoretically did, what I think happened, right, is that he intentionally created a false memory in people's minds. So it's Mandela effect combined with Inception. He used very precise imagery and words and like and built from existing elements of what's really going on in 80s video game culture to create this false memory. So, all right, any of you guys have any theories as to what some of the things going into creating this false memory are? Because there are a bunch.
Well, so I was gonna ask, are there games similar, like that have this like puzzle element where people might have played that thinking they might have played?
Great question. Great question. Yes, right. The thing about Polybius is that nobody was able to really describe what it actually was to play it, right? Just that it was sort of hypnotic and addictive. And the game that sticks out as sort of the most likely inspiration for that is a game called Tempest, which goes back to the early 80s, which was one of the first. It's like vector graphics. You guys ever played Tempest?
No.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So
it uses perspective to make it look like you're going through a tunnely type dealio.
Yeah.
Pretty
And
neat
it looks
for early 80s. I mean, it's fucking awesome.
And it's very much like it is like tunnel vision, right? Like you're going straight through this tunnel and there's this stuff flying at you, and it is very trippy. And it's a lot of like polygon shapes and that sort of thing. The poly in Polybius and the poly of the polygon graphics of Tempest are probably also part of what captures that sort of that connection. There's also, someone has pointed out, really interesting connection. There's a game called Cube Quest, released in 1983. Again, very early, right, in terms of video arcade graphics, etc., which was a game based in Laserdisc, right? So the most famous Laserdisc game that's not this game is Dragon's Lair. Cube Quest, the other one. What made Cube Quest, as I said, unique is that it was a Laserdisc game, and they didn't really have very many of them, right? Dragon's Lair was the first really popular Laserdisc game. It was a terrible game, but it was very cool to look at, right? It's the one where it's like actually a cartoon that you could play. In 83, that was really, really new and expensive technology. And the game itself looked a lot like what people describe Polybius to look like, including just like how bright and vibrant the graphics were because they're all running on this Laserdisc. But because it was a Laserdisc, almost no arcade could afford to have it. So the idea that there was this like very obscure random, game that didn't last very long is probably associated with actual memories of Cube Quest that then get lumped into the Polybius memories. The Men in Black thing is also probably a kind of a background memory of some of the early days of arcades. There are a lot of accounts of arcades having been raided by the feds because they were either suspected of or in fact were using arcades for gambling purposes. There was suspicion that the high scoreboards on arcade games were only there for gambling, which they usually weren't. I mean, I don't think they were in too many cases, but there were cases of federal agents coming into arcades. So the idea of these Men in Black showing up at the arcade and like doing something with the machines, that probably is a real memory that people actually had that then gets again sort of transposed onto this new story of this Polybius thing.
Oh, that's neat. I had never thought about that.
Yeah.
Like arcades being centers for gambling.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until the first time I looked up the story. I didn't know this. I didn't know that either, but it makes perfect sense. And like it's one of those, it sort of ties those two things together very neatly.
It'd be like horse racing, like you bet on the kid that's gonna get the high score and
more
Hitman.
like video poker machines.
Or like hitting ball.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
There's a couple other things about this, like the fact that it's 1981, I think is really telling because that is like, it gives it the perfect window for you to insert a bunch of memories. If you put Polybius at 81, then any game that came after it, you can basically say, oh yeah, it's probably that old, right? It gives it a giant window of games that you can sort of, your mind can mistake for that game if you put it sort of at the beginning of when video games became a thing. The MK Ultra thing, I think, is also a really important part of this, right? This is sort of around the time like that it was becoming widely known that MK Ultra happened. So, I think, when did the documents for MK Ultra get declassified? Was it the late 70s?
Oh, that I don't know. And we've talked about this.
Oh,
but I don't know.
that was the family jewels. Oh my God, this was my whole. She covered MK Ultra, but I covered Family Jewels for something else. And
yeah, I can't remember. I don't remember if it had been declassified or if it was emerging as a conspiracy theory that was real. I don't whatever it was, but certainly the MK Ultra thing by the 90s or early 2000s, people know about it, right? And so they can kind of then go back and sort of put MK Ultra memories onto Polybius as well, and then you get that, and it's this mind control idea. There were kids who were like passing out from playing video games in arcades in the early 80s. If you remember that happening, right, that can also probably feed into this. So there's plenty of accounts of like people, like kids with epilepsy would have seizures playing Tempest. There's one story about a kid who like literally passed out after playing some video game, but it turns out like he hadn't eaten in like a day and was just like drinking Coca-Cola nonstop for like 6 hours, which had way more to do with it.
6 hours.
But that basic idea of you play a game and you pass out or like you have a seizure or something, like, yeah, that was happening, like enough so that people would have some sort of connection to that basic premise. Apparently Polybius was created by a company named Sinus Lotion, which is a nonsense sort of quasi-German term that best translates to sensory deprivation. So that's also kind of telling that this is a hoax, right? Because like, if the name of the company that creates it is like, I am going to suck your brain out and make you into a mindless zombie, there's also no record of that company ever existing. So again, also very, very suspect as to whether or not it was actually a real game. And I think the other one that really sort of feeds into it is the Satanic Panic and the earliest sort of incarnations of it. But two, like, Dungeons and Dragons. So, like the early 2000s, late 90s, whatever, those two things are very heavily associated with the 80s. People remember kids being like, you know, stories of kids being kidnapped and like found in the woods by satanic cults or whatever. Those, it's something to do with games and gaming and mind control, and like all the stuff about D&D was all about that. So, you know, it seems to feed directly into that one as well. The best evidence that this was something that Kohler just completely made up is the name Polybius itself, which is, I think, genius, because it does sound like a word that an early 80s arcade game would be, right? Like if you think about like Galaga and like Arkanoid and Tempest and that sort of thing, like Polybius just sounds like the name of a video game. Polybius was a Greek philosopher who is notable for a couple of important things. One, his work in cryptography. So it's telling. Two, his main philosophy about history. At the time that Polybius was writing, history was an emerging art, and it was an art. You didn't have to necessarily comport to facts if you could tell a good story, right? So if you think about someone like Herodotus, right, the father of history, is also the father of liars. He made all like tons of shit up because you could do that. It's fine. Just tell a good story. If it pleases the person who's reading it, who cares? Polybius himself thought that history should have contemporaneous witness accounts to back it up, right? So the idea that you're naming this hoax after a guy whose entire philosophy was, you better double check your story to make sure that actually there's evidence to support what you're saying, is the ultimate tip of the hat. I think that this is like, you know, this is Kohler showing his hand here and saying, guys, think of the name, right? And that there is no evidence that this thing ever happened. And then, not coincidentally, Polybius himself was born in the city of Arcadia, which I don't also think is any sort of a coincidence. So, no, it didn't exist. But to this day, there are people who say it did. There's this guy who makes a living off of these walking tours of his experiences with Polybius. There are people who swear up and down, like, no, I played it, no, it's real, but like, there's people who swear up and down that Shazam was a real movie too.
Shazam was a real fucking movie. Don't you get me started.
With Sinbad, like it's not.
Shazam was a fucking real movie.
But you think it is.
Berenstein.
So it's funny because there's a couple things. Like I remember when I was growing up, it's weird that video games were actually a pretty sort of decent place for urban legends to emerge, right? And I remember like when I was little, I heard all of these different things about things you could do in Super Mario Brothers that you couldn't do. Like it was impossible. But like kids were like, no, if you do this button combination, if you go here and then you hit this brick and then you jump up this way and then you go backwards and then they could go into the negative world. And I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. Like it's not a real thing. But it caught fire, right? And like people had different variations of how you could like get to the negative world in Super Mario Brothers. And it was like never real, and GamePro itself was
it not real, or are you just terrible at video games?
I was pretty. I clocked so many goddamn hours playing Super Mario Brothers.
I clocked a bunch of hours. I don't mean you're good.
I had no excuse of being terrible.
In that very first Mario, like if you beat the whole thing, then you got to do the whole thing again.
And it was different, and then they did it.
Is it ducks versus like? In the first one it's mushrooms and then the next one is ducks or something.
Yeah.
That actually is true, but like that's a different thing.
What I'm talking about. No, I don't.
And getting back to GamePro for a second, because they were notorious for being sort of the origin point of the Shenlong urban legend in Street Fighter 2. So for some reason there was this urban legend that emerged that if you did some combination, you beat it like 4 times in a row on like level 9 and only got perfects every single time, you could unlock the secret character Shenlong, because in one of the cutscenes, like Ryu says, you must master, or like you must master Shenlong to defeat
to have a chance.
That's the one. Yeah, exactly.
I remember that shit.
He knows it perfect.
And so you know what Shenlong actually refers to, though, right?
that's who supposedly trained Ryu and Ken. That's their master, but you never see them.
Right, but that's the bullshit, because that's not true. The Shenlong is the uppercut punch. It's
Exactly.
yeah.
That everybody thought it was some dude. Yeah.
Some dude. And so then GamePro for years was like pushing this conspiracy theory, was like pushing this urban legend that you could unlock Shenlong, and they had like mock-up screenshots and like forever. People would like write in and try and like fool them into like convincing them they'd unlocked Shenlong. But yeah, it just went on. And this was before, you had social media, but it caught fire and everybody kind of believed it for a while until ultimately it was just a, sort of a footnote in Street Fighter 2 history. But then of course, like there's also The Last Starfighter. And I think that also sort of contributes to people's memories here. You guys have seen that movie? It's a fucking classic if you haven't seen The Last Starfighter.
I don't know if I have or not.
He has to play the video game and he beats it, and then he gets to go to space and become
Yes.
the actual starfighter. And then they leave like a weird robot fake version of him there that's super creepy that talks to his brother. You don't remember that movie?
I do not.
It's fucking great.
It is a great movie, but it also, I think that was also like 83, or at least the early 80s. And so people grew up with that movie as well. And so this basic idea of like a kind of a conspiracy to like recruit people with a video game machine that's going to like entrance you into this thing. I think that also sort of factors into people's kind of fake memories of this thing. But regardless, it is a great story of a combination of urban legends and conspiracy theories. And I really think it was all conducted by one guy writing one word on one website and then calling GamePro, and the rest of it was just people's imaginations taking over.
I think it's real.
So,
I love it.
Well, you know what? here's
definitely
the plot
think
twist.
that It could be real,
I think it's real.
but I don't buy the whole government conspiracy thing. I think back in the late 70s, all the way up until late 90s, really, or not late 90s, but late 80s, arcades were everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So every small business owner is trying to compete with everybody else. Maybe this one guy that owned one went out, bought a used cabinet or something like that, swapped out some of the boards and stuff in it, painted it up, whatever, so he could say, I have this one game
That nobody else
you can't
has.
play it anywhere else. You can't play it at any other arcade in town. You can come here and play it just to get traffic in the door.
I love that.
And at the same time, in arcades,
Yeah.
it was common for people to come in, service people to come in and repair the machines and stuff like that.
Yep.
Maybe they were just wearing black coveralls or something. Those are service uniforms. As little kids, they've been awake for hours and hours and hours.
Jacked up on coke.
Jacked up on coke and candy and stuff like that. Are you really remembering like exactly what these people were doing to this machine? Maybe they were just servicing the thing.
Yeah, I think it's possible that there is some sort of an Ur legend to Polybius that is what you're saying, right? That maybe there is, like, and maybe it is in this one arcade in Portland, Oregon. Like, I don't know. I'd love to have that uncovered. I'd also love for what you're saying to be a movie, and like they should make this into a fucking movie, right? Like turn this legend into a movie or
Hold on, because there is one.
There's a movie, and I watched it, and it's amazing.
Wait, really?
Yes, so it's called Ashens and the Polybius Heist.
Ashens is a YouTuber.
Yeah.
But apparently he's famous now and makes movies or whatever. So
And it is
Oh.
a British comedian, and it is very just goofy and like slapsticky and dad jokey, and I love it.
But the whole thing is just
So
them
much.
going, they're looking for this video game and then they find it. They're like, it's here.
Yeah.
So he assembles his team of misfits, you
Yeah,
know.
it's totally a team of misfits because it has to be.
Love it.
Ashens and the Polybius Heist. Yeah.
Well, I want like an origin story. Like I want like a Stranger Things, but about Polybius. Like that would be fucking unreal. Like it would be such a great, and you could play with so many of those ideas. Like
I don't think Polybius itself was a game.
yeah,
I think, back to what I was saying, like, dude just repurposed another arcade cabinet and put his little graphics on it, and it was probably just some other game.
Yeah.
Maybe something that wasn't as popular so people wouldn't realize it. and then called it Polybius. But
It's
yeah,
possible.
I don't
It's
think it was
possible.
an actual game itself.
I think it was an actual government fucking conspiracy. I'm all in.
It was just like Tempest with a swapped out title. I think that's not a unreasonable thing to think. There's been a couple of pop culture references that I love. One is that Polybius is in the Springfield arcade on The Simpsons. I think it's appeared in more than one episode. Like it's like next to whatever Bart's
Simpsons,
playing.
then it's fucking true because
That's true.
everybody knows that.
But the most famous and funniest appearance of Polybius is did you guys watch Loki?
I didn't.
Okay. So there's a point in Loki where he's at the end of the universe, where all of the like trash of the multiverse goes, right? Like all the things that aren't supposed to be there are just at this point at the end of the universe. So there's all these different forms of Loki who are all in this room, and just in the background of that room is a Polybius cabinet arcade console, just like standing there for the like 9 people who would get that joke to appreciate that little Easter egg. So I love that. I love that particular pop culture appearance of Polybius. But yeah, it's got all the makings of a really, really cool, 80s era sort of period piece that you could make a great like TV show or movie out of the story. But
So what if it was like an experiment? What if it was like the very early versions of like games as a medical device? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Universities testing this out because that's a thing now where games are being used for like hyperactivity and things like that. Maybe that was like an early version, and then like kids are passing out, so they're like, "We're gonna pull this
Wait a
out
minute.
and not talk about it anymore."
Everybody shut up.
It's funny you say that because like I also find it suspicious again that if it traces to 2000, that it's also like right at the time when you have parents freaking out about like Mortal Kombat and shit, right? Like that video games are going to turn you into a killer. It's a year before everybody blames Columbine on fucking Doom, right? And so like the idea that there's this like mind control element of video games, they're good for you, they're bad for you, they cause seizures, they don't cause seizures, like whatever, that's all being talked about around 2000 as well. So like it does sort of make sense that would be another thing that gets sort of lumped into the lore. But yeah, I mean, what if it was like, what if that's how you tell the story? They were trying to like MK Ultra, they're trying to like figure out how to get people to be like mind assassins or whatever by playing hyped up Tempest or something. I don't know. Anyway, that's my story.
I love it.
I think it's real.
All right. Fair enough.
What do you think, Ryan? Believe it's real?
Yeah, I still think the arcade. I think it was around for a little bit. I think it was around long enough to fuck with some people, and then
It's in a
James fucked it
landfill
up.
somewhere with all the ET games.
Well, the ET games. Oh, I love that story. Well, you know what,
The
guys?
ET games, I don't know about that.
You don't know what the ET? Oh, okay, that's for a different day. There's a whole fucking movie about that.
No, we have not done that yet. We will.
I will give you a happy ending to this.
There an episode, Steve Weeby and what's his name?
Because people are enterprising these days, Polybius now does exist. You can get it for PS2. Some developer was like, "Well, make it into a game," and they did. And it's basically a mashup of like all the games I described. It's this like hyper-colored Tempest ripoff that you can buy for PlayStation or PlayStation 2, I think.
There's actually a fan club of people that build their own Polybius cabinets.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome.
Awesome.
Kind of made me want to do one. Like,
Hell yeah.
No, I love it. Keep it alive, man. I like this is such a great like little weird story of this like subculture that emerged 40 years ago, and I think it's just really, really cool.
That's awesome.
1981 was 40 years ago.
I'm sorry. I know. Violent to say that. I know,
The year I was born.
I wouldn't know about that.
Yeah, this one over here.
I was 2, if that helps. So.
It helps a little bit.
I was not even thought about in 1981.
Oh, come on. You were thought about.
Who wants to go next?
I will cover my topic. I got my notes on my phone, so
Yeah.
Please excuse me looking down a lot.
You're very modern, man.
Well, I worked last night, so didn't have time to write anything or type. My topic is the Lake City Quiet Pills. I know these guys haven't heard of it. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
All right, so let's see, early 2009, so late 2008, early 2009, this guy shows up on Reddit, and at first he joins the jailbait forum, where they're just sharing pictures of underage girls and stuff like that. You know?
Oh, gross.
So he joins this forum on Reddit for jailbait, and really all he does is complain about people like spamming ads and stuff like that. He's just a grumpy old guy. He's just pissed off at the world. So after a while, he decides to create his own image hosting website, and it was called Lake City Quiet Pill. So he had a jailbait section on that, so people could go and upload their pictures on his website, and he could kind of moderate and keep the spammers out and stuff like that. As time goes on, he stops posting on Reddit and his own website. Somebody else by the title 26 joins up and makes a post and says the guy passed away, he was old, you know, so he's no longer going to be with us. And this guy is apparently going to take over. People think it's suspicious because 26 created an account like the same day he made the post. So a lot of people are like, is it the same guy? You know, is he just like faking everybody out? He just made a new account. And quite a few other people actually come forward and say, no, I knew him. He really did pass away, blah, blah, blah. The website just kind of goes dormant for a while, and then people start posting cryptic messages on it, like looking for 10 guys that can speak Spanish or French or whatever for whatever kind of op we're doing. And they started digging into the name a little bit, Lake City Quiet Pills.
It sounds like some weird Jeffrey Epstein creepy shit. What
Yeah.
the fuck? This gets weirder and weirder. What
The
hell?
Lake City Quiet Pills is a reference to a munitions factory in Lake City. They make bullets, and their slogan is dispensing quiet pills. You know, because a bullet kills somebody.
Yeah, make you shut up real quick.
Right. I get
So
that.
People start digging into these cryptic messages and stuff like that, and they're talking about like paying people and stuff like that. They think they're using this website to run private security and like private contractors for military operations and stuff like that.
Where they hide information in the JPEGs, you can do that. You can hide information in JPEGs where it's almost like a QR code, but built into it because there's so many tiny pieces you can make it. That's fucking creepy.
I don't know if they were or
Holy
not.
shit. They could have been though.
But people did realize that the guy that posted on Reddit as 26, there was also an account or an email associated with Lake City Quiet Pills website that was Angel26 at Lake City Quiet Pills. So people are like, is this the same guy that's posted on Reddit and on this other website? And there's just miles and miles and miles of lists of them like paying people and stuff like that, you know, telling you who to contact to get your payment if you were in France or Africa during these very specific dates, which all coordinate to when there was military conflict going on. So they're like, are they really just sending over private military forces? You know, that's why they're looking for people that speak these languages of whatever country they're going to. And are they using this website as a way to communicate on the download? So it's a pretty interesting story. Later on, they got more involved with like child porn and human trafficking and weird shit like that.
That's fucking weird. I don't know why, like military, why would they have picked though, like kitty porn pictures. You'd think they'd do something more legit than that. Right?
Not everybody is searching for that, so it is more private. So
do they assume that the type of people that would, or because they want it to be quiet,
yeah,
and nobody would believe anybody. They couldn't tell anybody because I was looking at this kitty porn website.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I right-clicked and searched.
Yeah.
Message to kill somebody.
You can't tell
Why are you
anybody.
looking at child porn? But it said to kill someone.
It doesn't matter.
Wait, what were you doing again? Exactly, and then nobody ever questions anything they said again.
After the original guy died, I think his name was Milo, was like his actual name. Whenever he passed away, the 2-6 guy, he sent out a message to everybody, and it was like, turns out this guy was super rich, and he'd just been sitting on his money for all these years. And he wants to pay out all the people that worked under him and stuff like that. So, like, if you worked with him during these dates, you're getting anywhere from like $3,000 to $10,000 out of his will.
Wow.
So the guy was running his own website, mysteriously paying out people for unknown work, and he's just got millions and millions of dollars in a will, just sitting there like.
That's fucking weird. Is that website still active?
I think it was set to expire in 2020. I don't know if anybody has renewed it, but it is transferred 4 times throughout its history. And the last time it transferred, it went into a non-transferable domain, which means they could no longer pass it to anybody else. I don't know if they've renewed it or not. But as of 2020,
Yeah.
Which is not that long ago.
So.
True.
Who do you think it is? What do you think it is, really?
I think definitely because I know private military is a thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are countless unclassified documents to where the government has paid out taxpayer money to private military companies to go to whatever conflict we have going on and do things that our military legally cannot do. Think like Blackwater and stuff like that. So I think this might have been legit. Like they might have really been running a private military.
That's fucking wild.
I think so too. I'd believe it. It sounds like the kind of fucked up thing Eric Prince would do. So, yeah. Does anybody have any guesses? Like, have you in your research? Has anybody like proposed any names of who this person might really be?
As far as I know, not really.
Yeah.
All you really know is his first name was Milo, and he was like 70-something years old, and that's it. All the other stories of his history or his background came directly from him. I mean, he's saying like he was born in the 30s or something like that, or late 20s, early 30s, something like that. He joined the military when he was like 14 years old. He went over World War I, things of that nature. But nobody really knows who he is, so you can't confirm these things. You don't know if it's real or not.
Yeah.
So, according to him, before he passed away, he just has years and years and years of military knowledge, which would make him a prime candidate to run a company based in military operations. I don't know. I think it's definitely real. I mean,
I don't know. I don't know what I think.
It's almost too wild to not be real. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, what's the point of hoaxing that? It's
oh, drink. Thank you.
Some things are too fucked up to not be real, and I think that's one of them. I completely could see that being legit.
Apparently, in 2018 to 2019, somebody posted on Reddit and told everybody to stop looking into the Lake City Quiet Bill.
Oh,
Like, you guys just need to shut it down, stop talking about it, stop looking at it, stop digging for info, whatever you're doing.
you got too close, Mulder.
The specific tagline for the munitions factory is dispensing Lake City quiet pills to lousy bastards in need of permanent rest.
Jesus
1968.
See, so I think that's like, you know, you say that it's military. What if it's not military though? What if this is like what if it's Hitmen?
Yeah.
Like
That's
because a lot of people don't know how to navigate the dark web or whatever. So he was like, fucking I'll make me a .com that you can't talk about. Hence the kitty porn.
Honestly, I was so sold on the military thing, I did not even think about Hitman.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I gotta go. I don't think it's military. I think it's Hitman.
I still think it's military.
What if it's Hitmen going after all the people that are uploading fucking kitty porn pictures?
Oh,
Ooh.
vigilantes.
That's
good.
my favorite thing in the world. That's what it needs to
That
be.
is good. Hey, I'm gonna start this image hosting website. Upload all your little kitty porn.
Yep.
And then I'm gonna track you down and like.
That's great. I hope that's what it is.
That's another movie right there.
Yeah.
That is a whole. That's a rabbit hole, right?
There it is, isn't it? That's great. That's what I'm going with. Kelly's confused as shit.
It'll make sense later when you listen to it.
Yeah, I'll get it later.
Let's let Ryan go. I'm probably not gonna do mine because mine's nowhere near as cool as y'all.
Oh,
I'm just gonna leave mine out.
Oh, come on.
Alright,
You gotta talk about some back room.
It's back room. All right, Ryan's
I
gonna
have
go.
a little bit of research, not much, on Cicada 3301. And yeah, this is supposedly the start is early 2012. Where's the date? I had it written down. It's like January 4th. They released the same date every year for like 3 years in a row, trying to recruit people. And the very first release in January of 2012 was, I believe it was some sort of cryptography. The guy that solved it, Marcus Warren, said that he got some sort of link afterwards after he solved the first puzzle that asked him some sort of weird questions about his support and like for or against information freedom, online privacy, and how he felt about censorship and shit. So after he solved all this shit, they wanted to know his weird political ideations. And then he was like, he got to a certain point and they gave him a private website that nobody else knew about. And he did some shit and didn't like the way it felt. And they just kind of stopped contacting him. But
so
then
who was that? Who was that?
The whoever released this,
Oh,
this crypto, like this, it's like a secret code cryptography dealio they released. Like one of the books they released has multiple pages that still haven't all been translated. But you get like an initial message, and if you can solve that, it might have a link to a web page that you get to, and that might have something on it where you have to right click and search the web page to find some kind of weird shit in the code to lead to another thing, and then eventually you solve it, and they want to know who you are and if you want to.
so it's sent like at random.
The initial is like just posted everywhere. It might be on Twitter or somewhere, and then
And then
you get to shit that you can't find unless you know the first answer, and it gets even more complicated. Yes, it's
That's
really
scary.
creepy. Yeah. But like every year in January of 2012, 13, and 14, they release clues and weird shit and people solve stuff. 2015, nothing. And then I heard in like 2016 or 2017, they released something new, but nobody's solved the newest one or whatever. But it's
I want to
some sort
say
of
I
weird
read the other
shit.
day that they just released something.
There may be a newer one then, yeah.
I don't remember where I was. Keep going, man.
I mean, that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot unless you want to actually look at what they solved or anything, but just.
Well, I know you got excited because you know about this one. So what do you got to add for this one?
Well, there's a really strong connection to QAnon here, which is worth. I mean, that's a story that goes on quite a long ways. If you watch Colin Hoback's Q Into the Storm, the HBO documentary series, he actually starts with cicada because a lot of the dots are connected between cicada and the origins of Q, and then the Q account, and then Q drops and all that sort of thing. But in essence, it's the idea that you could gamify information on the internet, right? That you can post something online and create real world effects, right? By doing that. And you can do something that's kind of like cryptic, and then also that has a solution, but also that like will necessarily involve other people bringing in their own sort of biases and their own interpretations of that solution, and then creating this sort of like weird obsessive havoc on the community by doing something that just is sort of like bizarre, right? And so the whole sort of nature of cicada as this, what started as a very simple, like a very complex puzzle with a very simple sort of presentation and premise, that then became this kind of like, if you know phenomenon that people obsessed over, and that created like a real human drama on the ground. The lesson of that was very clearly learned by someone like Ron Watkins, who very likely, at least for the second half of the Q phenomenon, was running the Q account. So yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting story. Like it's interesting insofar as like it is very kind of creepy. Like the actual like presentation of the images in Cicada are very creepy. Like it's got this very sort of like 1980s or 90s like thriller, weird graphic look to it. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but again, like Polybius, it kind of tells us a lot about the way that people like that conspiracy theories or that like psychological experiments on the public happen, right? That there's this sort of like this game that gets played, and yeah, it's a really interesting story.
How did we forget about the weird fucking goat devil, whatever? Do you remember the video we were all waiting on like 3 or 4 years ago and ended up being the weird dude who was talking about fucking abortion or whatever? Like it was like it was.
Do you know what we're talking about?
We counted down waiting for this video of her.
I just knew some shit was going down, man. Like
I thought fucking what's his name from this in England, the dude that's got arrested was gonna have some new shit for the government.
Oh, Julian.
I thought there was gonna be like a big release and end up being. What the fuck? Like, here, fucking watch it.
Dude,
this was.
I feel like we set alarms and shit.
We waited online. Like it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
That's fucking ridiculous. But you know what we're talking about, so I'm assuming you waited up and watched it.
I do know what you're talking about. I did not wait and watch it. But yeah, I have heard about it.
How could you know about it and not be like, I gotta know? Because you're not nosy. I'm a nosy bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think I think I've heard about it since. I don't think I knew about it at the time, but yeah.
Yeah, I totally remember all of that. That was
and then it ended up being just like the dumbest shit. Like
well, I mean, another one of those is like the weird like the clowns with the black balloons, right? Like you guys remember like a couple years ago
we had a clown pandemic here.
Yeah.
clowns were actually
we had t-shirts made.
Yeah.
we
survived the clown invasion of 2021 or whatever.
Yeah. I think it was like 18 or 19. It was pretty recently. Yeah, maybe 18. But like, yeah, that was to promote a movie, right? So like there was this viral promotional campaign that was being done. Like there were people dressed as clowns with like black balloons or whatever, and everybody like fucking freaked out all over the country, and because we're terrified of clowns, and you know, it's
I'm not terrified of clowns, but if I see them just like standing on the side of the road staring at me like a fucking weirdo.
Like, what the fuck?
Well, you're better than me then, because I'm terrified of clowns.
In certain specific places.
Clown settings.
Yeah.
Woods are not a setting for
A
clowns.
clown outside of its normal habitat.
Well, we worked with a real life clown. We worked at a haunted house one year, and there was a guy.
Right, exactly, at a fucking haunted house, not like at a nice
but he went to clown college, and he was a fucking asshole. Like he thought that he was God's gift to clowns, and
He got a degree from clowns.
yeah, he would get pissed and tell like the other people that showed up dressed as clowns that they weren't doing it right, and like he was a fucking asshole.
I'm telling you.
So, while you guys were talking, I did look up LakeCityQuietPills.com.
Yeah.
And Google Chrome tells me this website cannot be reached. So I also went to GoDaddy to see if the domain was available. And it says this domain is currently taken. But somebody still owns it.
It's just
Looping. I was gonna say, because if you could buy that thing, like you could do some fun stuff.
Oh, I was definitely gonna. If it was available, I was gonna buy it right now.
Holy shit, is Polybius.com available?
I doubt it.
Let's just buy a bunch of web domains.
Polybius.com, PolybiusTheGame.com,
See what happens.
PolybiusGame.com, Polybius Arcade Cabinet,
PolybiusIsreal.com. Yeah, I don't know.
PolybiusBlueCheckmark.com. We've
There
got
it is.
a million here.
We'll just
All
read
day
on
long.
the stupid shit all day.
Yeah. We just dragged them to drunk here.
Just different episodes of our podcast randomly.
Who was the politician that bought up the other politician's domain? and
I know
threw
what-
it to James?
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about too. There was, recent.
I know that.
That's hilarious. I love
love
it.
it.
I love it when they do like scheming ass shit.
Oh, the next time somebody's like pervy or an asshole to us on Twitter, we'll just like buy up their domain name and like direct them to drunk.
Polybius.com.
That's a great idea. Do what?
Polybius.com is taken.
God damn it.
How about PolybiusNotTheGreek.com? That way they
Oh,
know
that's
it's
right,
not
because
them.
I mean, that's kind of
Polybius parentheses, not the philosopher, or not the philosopher. Yeah.
NoGreeky.com.
No.
Like, what does that mean?
Well,
Polybius, duh.
The real Polybius.
so I looked up the cicada thing. Apparently, what I saw was just where they were posting that it's like the 15th anniversary or whatever when it started. Or
Oh, is it really? Oh my god,
Some-
not
Has
long.
it been that long already?
that's what somebody else was saying.
From
You know,
12 to 22 is 10 years.
Oh, 10
years
then.
2007, I mean.
do you know what year this is?
2007 to 2022 is 15
I
years.
know, I just saw it. Let me
What's
bring
7
it,
to 22?
let me bring it back up.
What's 22 minus 7?
I don't fucking know.
I'm not scared to do math.
15.
You know how many shots we've done?
15.
I wish you'd brought me another shot, by the way,
Oh,
but you didn't.
yeah, I'm a piece of shit.
Oh no.
Are y'all trying to do math over here?
No, I'm trying to find the
I
thing.
think we're trying to do that.
Da-da-da-da. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's 10 years. My bad. It's 10 years.
Okay,
So
the
it's 10
33,
years.
0 shots.
But yeah, so and the third one is still
Unsolved.
not solved. Apparently part of that you have to get from the dark web though. So that shuts out a bunch of people. I don't know how to get on the dark web, do you?
No, I have no
I
idea.
wouldn't even know where to
No.
begin. Like I don't
No.
know what that means.
Use a Tor, bro. I don't know how to do it.
He
either.
doesn't know either.
I have no idea.
Nobody knows.
We're definitely not
I've
doing
never
it
bought anything on the dark web in
here
my
because
life.
this is not
Nope.
work.
I also I wouldn't even know where to begin to what I push the buttons into to hack something. Like what does that like what do I open to start hacking? Like what, I don't even
So this says the current progress, there's 56 pages remaining of the 58 pages.
Oh,
That's
wow.
that book I was talking about. They've only
In the
found 2
current
pages.
step. Yeah. And it says the last progress of any updates was from 2014.
It's hard as shit. Yeah, the last one I heard was insanely hard.
So I kind of want to go in. I'm gonna go fishing on the dark web and find it. I'm gonna solve this shit.
yeah,
You
fuck,
know,
fuck the
You don't know how to get on the dark web, remember?
One of y'all nerds does though.
fuck the Zodiac letters.
Aye.
Gotta-
We do that to them all the time. We insert the Revenge of the Nerds. Nerds.
yeah.
I actually used that sound in the lab.
I heard it because I listened to our show.
I mean, it's
I
something
didn't
to be
know if
proud
it
of,
would
you
get
know.
taken down or whatever.
Yeah, we're probably gonna get sued for that.
Copyright strike. That fucking dude's gonna come on Twitter and be like,
Yeah, take your millions in podcasting money and walk away with it.
Well, what else we got?
That's it.
That's it.
I think that's it. I'm not gonna do mine because it's dumb compared to y'all's. So.
Oh, I like yours though.
Do you know about mine?
I was told I was if it is what I think it is.
It's I was gonna do the back rooms.
Yes, I love this. I think
Oh
that's
shit!
awesome.
Let's do it. Let's do the back rooms.
Well,
'Cause I don't know what the back rooms are.
So what had happened was they told us that there was going to be a tornado today. So I had assumed that we'd be recording at the house, and I took a nap and I overslept. I don't have any research.
Oh, nice. All right, cool. That's better then. Yeah. Just save it for another day. That's fine.
Oh, I got like the first page of the Wikipedia. I know that it started. It started on. It's a creepy pasta or whatever.
Wait,
Yeah,
can we
yeah.
Save it and do an all creepy pasta episode, like a Slender
idea.
Man, that a bunch of shit like that. We could do a whole bunch of different
nice.
shit of just that, and you could come back on and we could do another show in another.
You'd be liking the
next
creepy
month or
pastas.
two,
I
yeah.
like them.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, that
That'd
sounds
be
We
great.
can totally do
Yeah.
that.
We might even be able to see if the British drunk people, though, who do we like?
Chat Smash.
Chat Smash, yeah, maybe they could join. I like them; they're fun.
I love Chat Smash.
And we
They're
haven't
my-
talked to them in a while. It's
Very
since our year
Like a whole
anniversary, we talked to them.
extravaganza.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
Because
we
we're
could have
coming up on our 50th episode.
Yeah,
we
we
need to
could
do.
have
Oh wow! Congrats. That's awesome.
Extravaganza with our favorite peeps. You and Chat Smash and
Amanda.
Nice.
Amanda.
I was kind of excited to learn about the back rooms.
Well, now
I
you'll
don't know
have to
about the
wait.
back rooms either, but apparently Karen doesn't.
I just know the little bit that I had read and like the pictures that I've seen. I do know that there is a dude who I got super excited at first. I was trying to hunt his ass down. He makes backrooms videos. It turns out that he's a 16-year-old kid, so he cannot be on this show. So I was like, no, let me not contact this kid because that's how you get. That's how you catch a charge or whatever.
This chick keeps emailing me about
Yeah, I know.
back rooms. Is that code? What the fuck? Yeah.
That's the problem when like most of the content on the internet is produced by children. And you're like,
I
fuck,
know,
like
but
you
this,
can't talk.
like the videos that he does, I mean, they're really good. Like for
Yeah.
him to be 16 years old, you know, like I love it. So yes, I'm down for a creepypasta 50th anniversary.
All
Or
right,
50th
That'd be fun as
anniversary.
shit. 50th anniversary.
50th anniversary. 50 years of podcasting. Yeah.
God almighty. All right. So I guess that's it. That's all we got.
But
That was fun though.
It was
Yeah.
fun.
I,
Cool, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead
My
and plug your
pleasure.
shit again so everybody knows who you are.
You got it. I'm John Brooks. You can find me on Twitter at probablyrealjb because like who knows if I exist or not. Really. The show 1999 the podcast is on Twitter at 1999 the podcast. You can find the show by searching 1999 the podcast. We're on all the podcast apps, whatever. If you want to use Good Pods is cool. We like promoting Good Pods.
we're rock stars on Good Pods.
You guys are rock stars on Good Pods. You can find us there, rate and review, whatever. The other show, Hard to Believe, the alternative Mondays to that show. And that's on all the platforms as well. So yeah, find me on Twitter, find that podcast on Twitter. Send me hate mail, love mail, whatever. I'm always happy to engage. No, I've only gotten hate mail from Scientologists. So
Have you
otherwise,
actually gotten hate mail?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I did an interview a couple years ago with Tony Ortega, who's been covering Scientology for like decades. And I just got a lot of, so I got some hate mail from Scientologists and some from like MAGA people because I lumped them in with like cultists. So like everybody, like a lot of people hated that
How
episode.
many times have we said Scientology was a cult?
Oh, it's completely a
Every
cult.
time we talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
We got a lot of hate from the flat earth people.
Yeah, we had a flat earther on
We
one of our we were
Ooh.
super new at that time too. Like, and you
Yeah,
know,
we
we got a
got-
bunch of bullshit. But we went in, we were just like,
I did an episode about flat Earth in my show, Hard to Believe.
Hey, everybody out there, you know what L. Ron Hubbard said? He said, fuck flat earthers. I don't know if y'all know that, but y'all should talk to each other about it, not us.
Uh-oh.
Flat earthers and L. Ron Hubbard. Y'all just,
you trying to
Talk
get
that.
L. Ron Hubbard in trouble.
no, he died.
He's dead.
They found him on a boat with a whole bunch of drugs and like some
Yeah.
bad shit. Yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard, a
He was
problematic
fucking
person
crazy.
in a lot of ways.
Those people though, because they're like so happy.
Yeah, they'll sue you.
For what? I ain't got no money.
Good luck.
Yeah.
You can have my 2006 Kia Spectra. Fucking hell. Go ahead. I don't give two shits.
Yeah, and everybody joked that I was going to get sued for doing that episode, and I was like, I don't have any money. I can't.
Hey, if we get sued, I bet we can get our check mark on Twitter.
I slander Scientology all the time.
Anything. We would be famous if they sued us. I could be like, Tom Cruise is suing me.
We can't get verified on Twitter, and it pisses us off because we actually have a U.S. Patent and Trade Office.
Yeah, we're trademarked.
We haven't been sued by Tom Cruise or L. Ron Hubbard.
We
There's
have
no
an
way.
IMDb page.
Well, it's David Miscavige who'd be suing you now, not L. Ron
Yeah,
Hubbard,
nobody's seen his wife in like 8 years.
I was about to ask.
Oh, that. Speaking of conspiracy theories, there's some avenues to walk down right there. No, I did an interview with Daniel Clark, who directed the movie Behind the Curve, which is about the flat Earth movement.
We saw that movie.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. Yeah. It's a pretty interesting subject. So, anyway, yeah, if you like that stuff, I have a bunch of back episodes you can listen to. And anyway, that's me.
Hell yeah!
But thanks for having me, guys. It's really fun.
Thank you for coming. We are definitely gonna have you back for a creepypasta shit.
My voice won't give out quite so easily then too, which is good.
You're good.
Your voice is good. I always feel like, our voices are crap, and then somebody actually confirmed that our voices are crap. I say, yeehaw.
Oh yeah, yeehaw, bitch.
Appalachia.
I feel like that's a rude thing to say about Appalachian people, right? Whatever.
Are you talking about that one comment that guy left? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeehaw, bitch.
What the fuck, dude?
But one star I saw you want to, but have a good reason. His whole thing was, I don't like listening to drunk people. So why did you put on a fucking podcast called Drunk Theory?
Right. You're not like
what did you think was happening here?
We're a bunch of drunk rednecks.
Yeah.
Our show is called Drunk Theory from South Carolina.
Yeah, it doesn't take a genius.
You're not. Yeah, there's no false advertising there.
And our theme song, he had to sit through it.
That's true.
And it says,
we're a bunch of idiots getting drunk.
He's like, there ain't nothing more tacky. All right, guys.
And Southern people hate to be called tacky if you're not tacky, because I feel like we are.
I'm not tacky.
No, it's great. Like your show's like being in a college dorm room at 2 a.m. somewhere in the South, and it's fucking great. Like, I love it.
That is my favorite review that we've ever got. It's be with these people is like be with your buddies after the bar closes.
Yeah.
Like random bullshit. And that's exactly what it is. That's our goal in life.
Yeah.
It's like your show's a really good, I mean this in a complimentary way, a really good background show, right?
Because you don't have to pay attention. We're not paying attention.
No, I do pay attention, but when I'm around the house, it's just this, it's this comforting sort of thing to have, because it feels like there's people in the room with me, and it's great. I have I got my driving podcast, and I've got my doing stuff around the house podcast, and you guys are definitely a great doing stuff around the house podcast.
Awesome. Appreciate it. All right. Well, I guess that's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
We will definitely be talking to you again.
Awesome. Yeah, look forward to it. Cool.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good one.